Last week, we looked at two distinct texts from Japan. The first, the Pillow Book, gave us a view of courtly life from the viewpoint of a high-ranking noblewoman. The other, Atsumori, offered a more spiritual view of the culture. Atsumori, at its heart, is about Buddhist ideals, the process of growing through spiritual reflection from a state of illusion to one of awareness. Renshi, who used to be a great warrior, gave up his life of wealth and aggression to become a priest after he killed a young boy Atsumori. This story takes place long after that moment, but both Renshi and Atsumori have not moved on. Renshi is still seeking atonement, and Atsumori is bound to the earth through his anger and resentment. When they meet again at the site of the battle, Atsumori first appears as a grass cutter, but they both soon realize who he is. As Atsumori recalls his death, he nearly gives in to his anger, but he sees Renshi praying for them, and is able to release his anger and move on. The Pillow Book presents an extreme contrast stylistically. Whereas Atsumori is tight and formal in its construction and presentation, actors would be wearing masks and performing carefully practiced movements, the Pillow Book is informal in style and profusive in its language. Shei Shonagon shares her thoughts and observations on her world and the people in it, discussing everything from why the best priests are handsome to the emperor's cat. But despite this seeming superficiality, there's much depth here as there is in Atsumori. Shonagon explores the nature of mankind, its foibles and jealousies, its joys and loves. She captures day-to-day moments, thoughts, and experiences that resonate even today. After all, who doesn't love finding something in a hurry, or that moment of realization where you cry, "Oh, that's where that comes from." For our text this week, we're moving to West Africa with one of the central narratives of the Mali Empire, the Epic of Sunjata. Sunjata originated in the 13th century and tells the story of one of the early rulers. It ties together history and myth to relate the glories of the past as the Mande, the modern descendants of the Mali Empire, see them. The text and culture of the Mande were both influenced by the advent of Islam in the 11th century, and the Prophet Muhammad was often incorporated into these narratives, including that of Sunjata. The Mande lived throughout sub-Saharan West Africa, speaking many languages and dialects. Still, though, they maintain many traditions from the past, including that of passing stories down through the generations orally. The version of Sunjata in the text was not recorded until the 1990s. It is still being recited in the Kumikoro, the ancient speech, by people known as griots or jilu, who are hereditary bards. In the early times, these bards were not only the preservers of history and legend, but also the royal spokesmen. They spread tales of the exploits of their patrons while reminding them of great deeds of those who came before, encouraging them to strive for that high bar. These Jilu, who continue to share their stories today, are often descended from long lines of bards who have preserved and related the traditional stories in private recitals and public performances. Because of this, the traditional stories and characters, like Sunjata, are familiar to most Mande. These performances are often interactive, incorporating a call and response technique with a designated Naumu sayer responding to Amu, which can be translated as indeed or we hear you throughout the recitation. As you read the text, try to imagine it being performed, or, better yet, read it aloud to get a feel for the sound and language and consider, how might the experience be different with an oral text than a written one? Why do you think the Mande people have kept this tradition alive? As always, you have your discussion board post and a journal entry. Don't let yourself fall behind on those. The end of the quarter is going to come sooner than you realize. Also, make sure that you finish your revisions and turn your second essay in. Next week, we'll move on to the third and final one as we approach the end of the quarter. Happy reading, and let me know if you have any questions.